Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am with you from lovely Escazú, Costa Rica, where it is becoming dusk at this day, this Sunday, February 8th in the year 2026. And lots going on this week, and so let's get into it. You know that we're in the middle of a Venus square Uranus, which I talked about last week because both Mercury and Venus were moving through Aquarius, and they were going to square Uranus, having just turned direct, at the end of Taurus, because Uranus is getting revved up and getting ready to get out of Taurus and finishing up its tour of duty there before it goes into Gemini at the end of April. And so Venus square Uranus is happening while we speak, and that's always maybe a surprise. Maybe someone calls you out of the blue and says, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in ages," and it's so great to reconnect with someone. Maybe you are meeting up with friends and you're having a little bit of a wild time, or there's some stimulating conversation, or maybe your creativity has been up and running and inspiring. Maybe you are spending too much money. Maybe a bill came out of nowhere. Like, oh, wow, I spent that much on my credit card? Wow. I thought that one was going to be on the following statement. Okay. But there's that kind of stuff going on right now. And the best use of it, I think, is always a creative breakthrough. A breakthrough in, our relationships, and trying to open the door to something new and be open to possibility, because that Uranus is always the planet of the unknown. Like, we don't know what to expect, the unexpected. And that's good sometimes, the right kind of surprises. We want things to come out of nowhere. Otherwise, we are in the same pattern all the time, always. And we have to shake up our life a little bit so that we can get creative, so that we allow for new things to happen to us. If I hadn't let things shake up 10 years ago, I wouldn't have come to Costa Rica on vacation. I could have kept going to Europe and different places, and I hadn't thought about Costa Rica until I was invited by friends. But that was an important step. We don't know what's lying on the other side of the Venus-Uranus, right? So this is a good thing. It's sometimes it's a good shake up to do things a little differently. Yesterday I was sitting here saying, I need to do something different. So I feel like for me, I took myself out on a date by myself to Barrio Escalante, which is downtown San Jose, a charming neighborhood that's kind of reminds me a bit of the Village, but it's not that densely populated and densely packed with restaurants and shops, but it does have restaurants and shops, and it can be a little touristy, but there's some unique stores there and cool places and good coffee. And so I went there yesterday just to be different in my Saturday, because I'm always here. I'm working a lot. I'm busy. I'm seeing clients. I'm on the phone. I'm doing stuff. I'm working on the garden, and I'm here all week, all the time. And even on the weekend, I have other things planned and stuff. So I think I said yesterday, I'm like, it's a full Saturday. I don't have to write a class or something today, or let me go out. I haven't been there in months. So I went out and I got something to eat while I was out, and I got a little shopping, got some fun things and all. And so I feel like I took advantage of the moment and responded to freshness in my routine. So I thought that was a good thing to do, right? But now we have 4 planets in Aquarius, not 5. We have 4 because Mercury has moved into Pisces, as you remember from my podcast last week. And we will, on Tuesday, experience Venus going into Pisces, and that will leave us with 3 planets in Aquarius. And so that will be 5:19 a.m. Venus enters Pisces. It's sign of exaltation. It likes Pisces a whole lot. It wants to be, adored and romanced and flirted with and charmed and nothing too dangerous, sweet, kind, romantic. It'll be there for Valentine's Day. It's all about the chocolates, the bubble bath, the rose petals. This is Venus and Pisces. This is Valentine's Day with Venus and Pisces. So yeah, that's a fun thing to have. And Venus and Pisces is, like I said, one of Venus's favorite places. So we look for love and unconditional love while Venus is in Pisces. And we look to, the universe and Mother Nature, Goddess, to connect with them in that respect, to connect with the love principle from nature, from the goddess, from all those good places, from God, Goddess, Mother Nature, the universe. And so we really can embrace Venus and Pisces in these next weeks, and it's always a wonderful time of year to appreciate that, right? So it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have Venus going into Pisces this week, and then that will leave the Sun and Pluto and Mars in Aquarius, which is a lot of energy anyway. And, we've got 10 more days to Aquarius season. And of course, the eclipse is at the end of Aquarius next week. And Mars is in Aquarius, and it will stay there for a little while longer because it's not even halfway through. So this is still a lot of Aquarian, eclectic, innovative, genius, brilliance, contrary energy, and altruistic energy, and also revolutionary energy. So let's see what that eclipse brings next week, because they are wild cards. And we want to stay open. Again, these Uranian moments, we want to keep ourselves open so that we can expect some newness and some freshness in our lives. If we didn't have Uranus aspects, in Aquarius aspects, we would die of boredom and staleness. So that's an important thing to pay attention to. And Aquarius always asks us to be different, to be innovative. And sometimes Aquarius is different for the sake of being different. And I can vouch for that. It's like everybody else is doing it, I don't want to do it. No, thank you. So yeah, that's something to look forward to and to be present with during Aquarius season. And always try to bring a little bit of fresh energy in your life. Uranus is the great awakener. Therefore, Aquarius is like, when we get awakened, when we have Aquarius season, it's time to stir the pot a little bit. So, of course, the big news of this week, Venus is not the only planet changing signs. The big news is that Saturn is going into Aries. And it's going to do this on Friday the 13th at 7:11 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is now the final entry into Aries. Last year it went into Aries, and it was like big news. It went in for the first time in so many years. And then it went back into Pisces, finished up there. But now this is it, guys. Friday the 13th, the moon will be in Capricorn, which is important because Saturn is ruling the moon. And Saturn will be moving and changing signs. It will leave Pisces for good and go into Aries. And boy, I can talk about this. So, first of all, let's talk about the present. The present is that we are in the last week of Saturn in Pisces, and it's been here since 2023. And that was about March or so that it went into Pisces. It left Aquarius, went into Pisces, and it stayed there. It didn't do, I don't think it did a backwards, back and forth thing. And it just went into Pisces, and it's been just about 3 years, and often Saturn stays about 3 years, sometimes a little less, like 2.5 or 2 3/4 or something. And so this is the end of Saturn Pisces, and it's the end of the zodiac. So the end of the zodiac gives us pause, because it's the end of a big cycle. And so Saturn was here last time, 1996 or so, 1995, 1996, it went into Aries. And I remember that very well. And I want to say that this is a real turning point because Saturn is going to meet Neptune, but more on that in a few minutes. But this is a turning point because it's Saturn finishing up the zodiac. Now, when something comes to the end of the zodiac, So many emotions are happening for all of us. And so I want to make you aware of what this feels like so that you can do something about it for yourself in these next days. Now, I spoke on Instagram yesterday about Saturn in the end of Pisces and moving. And one of the main things about Saturn at the end of Pisces is that it brings this sense of foreboding, this sense of giving up, this sense of discomfort in a way that is that only Saturn can do at the end of Pisces. You know, now I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. When I lived in the Northeast and winter was ending, of course, that's the end of Pisces before we go into Aries, before the spring starts in March. So when it's the Aries, ingress, and the sun goes into Aries, we're like, yeah, spring is coming. But those last weeks of the sun, this is the sun in Pisces, is, oh my God, I can't take one more day of this winter. And the groundhog said 6 more weeks, and it's been so cold, and it's freezing, and it's snowing, and it's like, oh no, not snow again. Come on, it's March. Give me some spring. I want to see the flowers. And it feels just endless. And that's what Saturn feels like too, only worse. That's the sun, because we want the sun to shine and be exalted, right? In Aries. Saturn is not exalted in Aries. Saturn is at its fall. And when Saturn goes from Pisces to Aries, it's going into its fall, but it's still a fresh new energy. It's still not the end of the zodiac. The end of the zodiac, starting a fresh new zodiac. But Saturn in Aries makes you feel like giving up. In a nutshell, giving up, falling apart, kicking your diet out of the room, kicking your exercise equipment out of the room, giving up on whatever you've been sustaining in all these weeks and months, right? I can say to you that my meditation practice is paramount, and it has been extremely helpful during this time. And it's the one thing that I have no desire to give up. And even though we want to eat badly, eat more sugar, have more caffeine, do things, just eat out, call Uber Eats, and those kinds of things creep up because you just go, what is it all for? I feel like giving up. What is it all for? I've lost it. I don't care anymore. I don't feel like it. It's lethargic. It's burdensome. It's difficult. I can't see to the other side of this. It's really creating a lot of stress for me. Will this ever end? All of this is Saturn at the end of the zodiac. And it's very complicated when we have to end things and begin something new, and we want that something new to happen yesterday, right? Just give me the fresh energy already. What is this? And it just seems like nothing is satisfying. Nothing is enlightening. Nothing is restorative or inspiring. And that restorative, sleep is the domain of Pisces, right? So maybe we want to sleep a lot, but eventually you have to get up and do things, right? And Saturn at the end of Pisces really gives us the pause of, I just don't know how much longer I can stand it. And so much that we really start to give up things. Now, I have to warn you against all of this, because you could end a very good relationship. You just are impatient. You could end a good job. You could say, I'm quitting. But it makes you feel like quitting. It's the quitter energy, okay? This is exactly what Saturn in the end of the zodiac, at the end of Pisces, makes you want to do, quit. Or if you're trying to quit something like sugar or smoking, well, then you don't want to quit, okay? So it makes you pick up the bad habits. Remember, Liz Green, the preeminent astrologer Liz Green, wrote the book Saturn, a new look at an old devil. And this is like one of the favorites of all the astrology communities. And she wrote this back in, I think, the 80s or the late 70s. And it's out there, and it's a very popular book. Saturn is a new look at an old devil. An old devil, because Saturn is like the devil, because it's that voice that says, why are you bothering? You'll never lose weight. You'll never stop smoking. Oh, that relationship will never work out. Oh, just stop, And it reminds me, I was thinking this today or yesterday, of that old movie from the 60s with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore called Bedazzled. And they made a remake of it in the 90s, I think, with Brendan Fraser. But Peter Cook and Dudley Moore were a comedy team from England, and they were ridiculously hilarious. And they were in this movie, and Peter Cook played the devil, and Dudley Moore was this poor schmuck who worked in like a fast food or like a little greasy spoon place, flipping burgers. And he couldn't get up the nerve to ask out this girl who was played by Eleanor Braun. And he made a deal with the devil, and they went through like how many wishes he got and how many, things he could do. And they always wound up being thwarted by the devil. So, it was always, there was one point where Dudley he says, I want to be a pop star. And, it was like British pop stars back in that day. And it was hilarious because he was being a pop star, and he was like, had all these women like, at his audience and screaming for him. And then, Peter Cook comes on the stage, and he's a pop star, and he stands there saying things like, oh, don't bother. Oh, just go away. I'm not interested. And women were going really crazy for him because he was the devil, and he was saying, I'm unavailable. And that's when all the women went screaming and rushed the stage. So my point is, don't listen to Saturn. It's lying to you. I'm unavailable. It's all unavailable. Nothing's going to work for you. And it's like this thing that's saying, why do you bother? This is it. Saturn, this is one of the times when we're not looking for achievement with Saturn. We're looking for some comfort. And there is no comfort. There's no joy. There's no comfort. There's just this blah. And that's what it feels like with Saturn at the end of the zodiac. So this is only going to last until Friday. And then Saturn moves into Aries. And while it's in its fall there, you still get things accomplished. It's still the fire energy. It's still rocking, And then Saturn is going to meet with Neptune. And I'm sorry, they're still together. Saturn and Neptune, even though they're in different signs, they're still conjunct. If you have a baby, if I say to you, you're having a baby, Saturn and Neptune are together, even though they're in different signs. But that is a different dynamic and a different frequency and a different energy than if you have a baby who has Saturn and Neptune together at the 0 degrees point of the zodiac. So this is where we're going now. Saturn now enters Aries on Friday, and that's where it's going to be for the next 3 years or so, just like it was sort of 3 years in Pisces. And so this is something interesting because it's new, okay? It is the newness of the 0 degrees Aries, but it is a whole new consciousness because, well, first of all, Aries is the first sign, and Aries is fire, and it's ruled by Mars, and Saturn is now in Mars's domain, and Saturn and Neptune will no longer be disposed of by Neptune. Well, Neptune is itself, but they're going to be disposed of by Mars, and Mars is in Aquarius, and so there's a little unexpected energy here, right? So when Saturn starts its journey of the zodiac all over again, it's a fresh new cycle. Something in your life is probably ending and something very new is beginning. And look to the house that has 0 degrees Aries in it, because that's a very important point in where we move forward and where we can turn things around. Because 29 Pisces is the hell with it energy, okay? That's the frequency of 29 Pisces. It's as I've said before on this podcast many times, it is the Easter story. It's the end of disillusion and surrender. It's leaving behind the world and complete removal of yourself from the world, because it's Christ on the cross. It's like I'm removing myself from the world. And then 0 degrees Aries is the flip. It's where something pokes itself up and out of the darkness, the cold, dark earth. And 0 degrees Aries is the power of your intention to move forward. And Saturn always wants to move forward, right? Saturn doesn't want to stay stuck. It wants to achieve. It wants to be successful. It wants to climb. And you know what? Aries happens anyway. You can remove yourself from the world. You can eat all the junk food because you got all the hell with it energy. And instead, really, Aries is going to happen. You're going to wake up on Friday. You're going to wake up on Saturday, and Saturn's in Aries. And Aries is good luck. It's where you can throw back the stone. It's, it's a don't live in the past, be in life energy. Okay? And so it's the intention that drives the engine of fantasy. Meaning fantasy is the Neptune, right? It's the 12th house, it's the Pisces, right? It's that. But when we move into Aries, that's going to happen eventually, it's like, okay, now my intention, I can see a way forward, as opposed to this nebulousness at the end of the zodiac. Okay? So let yourself say, the hell with it this week. Okay? But try not to, like, if you've already quit smoking 6 months, don't give it up. Keep clear of cigarettes, right? If you're on a diet, if you're exercising, you're doing good things for your body, don't give it up because you've got the hell with it syndrome during the week of Saturn leaving the zodiac behind and going into a new zodiac. Aries is good luck. That 0 degrees Aries point is good luck. Where do you have it in your chart? Because depending on where you have it, that's where that moment, that spring of good luck is, okay? And you want to look at that. And, where's your intention? What is your intention going forward? Change your life? How do you change your life? Okay? How do you want to change your life? And, when we move through this, and we're getting past the end of the zodiac, Saturn and Neptune are going to bring us something new and fresh and different. And, we won't be trying to escape so much anymore. This is good. It's good luck. So we want to take a step forward and initiate something new and remember our intentions. The intentions when you tried the new diet, the lack of smoking, the exercise protocol, all the things that you were doing that were feeding your life and feeding your soul and feeding your body, mental, emotional, spiritual things, right? So now we're going into Aries, and it's like, yeah, this is when you start again or start new or bring that fresh energy into your life. And it's so important to acknowledge this. Where is it in your chart? If you want to find out where it is in your chart, you can go get your chart read by an astrologer like myself, or you can go look online at your chart if you don't have your chart already. And just know that this is something profound that's affecting us right now. Now, they're not going to stay at 0 degrees Aries forever. They're going to be there. Saturn will move faster than Neptune, and they're going to be moving and going forward in a matter of days. And so once we get into March, they're already going to be ahead of 0 degrees Aries. So this is the moment when we start anew and we can open the door to something that's good luck for us. Okay? Aries energy is also primitive energy, as opposed to the opposite sign Libra, which is refined and civilized. Aries is a much more raw energy, and Mars is a raw energy as well, right? And so once Saturn steps in on Friday, it's going to be with Neptune. And that's it. We've got them together. They will make their exact conjunction on the 20th. If you want to learn more where I describe this, you can certainly purchase my 2026 lecture, which is called The Rebellion of Fire and Air. And I go into great detail about all of this year with that. And then there, of course, is the eclipse coming right before the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So Saturn's going to go in, then there's going to be the eclipse, then the two meet, Saturn and Neptune. So this is all a big, powerful time ahead. Mars is going to figure into this because it does rule Aries. And so this week, interestingly enough, Mars is going to hit 15 degrees of the fixed sign Aquarius, and 15 fixed is the degree on the cardinal axis. So just like 0 degrees Aries, 15 fixed, that could be Aquarius, Leo, Scorpio, or Taurus. This happens to be Aquarius. So Wednesday, it's going to hit 15, and that's the cardinal axis. And it's going to, Wednesday, Thursday. And then when that happens, we might get some world events happening. And with Neptune at the cardinal axis, ruled by Mars, which will be at the cardinal axis. So I'm expecting something maybe this week, some information this week. And then what's going to happen is we'll have that eclipse, and Mars, the moon will pass over Mars before it reaches the sun and makes the eclipse. So there again, it's hitting Mars. And then eclipses don't really end until Mars passes over them, or Saturn. Saturn's not going to pass over the eclipse point, but Mars will. And Mars is going to pass over the first eclipse at the end of February, beginning of March. So February 28th, March 1st, Mars will pass over the 28 degree, 29 degree eclipse point that we're going to have on the 17th. And so I expect more energy from this eclipse to get triggered as Mars is passing over it only like 10 days later. And so this is important because that will be right before the second eclipse. And we're looking at something very deep here. Okay, so Mars figures into this. And so there might be some sort of raw warrior, primitive animal energy. That's Mars. That's Aries. So this is a very, very potent time and potent eclipse. So we're going to see what comes of this as Mars gets triggered and Mars triggers the eclipse. And Saturn and Neptune we're going to be feeling this. They're always together. They are always about unease. It's always this feeling of the castle built as the tide comes in, right? And we're going to watch how they work together. They're an interesting duo because Neptune is really very nebulous, and it's what's going on in the ethers and the unseen realms. And then Saturn can bring those things right very much into the material world, the 3D. And so I think that this could be good energy for manifestation. If you want to manifest something and you have a good intention, as everything goes into Aries, you set your intention, your focus on what you want to create, what you want to manifest, and Saturn will help bring it into being because that's the nature of Saturn. That's what it does best. It makes things tangible. But by the time I reach you again on this podcast next Sunday, the 15th, we will be on the other side of Saturn in Pisces. Saturn will not come back to Pisces for another 29 years, and we have a lot to do between now and then. So, and it probably won't be with Neptune the next time. It will definitely not be with Neptune next time. In the meantime, where does this land for you? How does this land to you? How are you feeling? And lots of emotions this week. Do not discredit them. Acknowledge them. Let them complete a cycle. Sit with them. If it gets to be too much, sit with them and just let it pass. But don't overindulge. Don't believe the lie. Don't deceive yourself in these moments. Just keep going. Because when Saturn goes into Aries, it's going to be exciting. And we want new, fresh energy, right? exciting for us in our individual lives. I don't know what's going to happen in the world at large, but there's always the chance of there's going to definitely be some sort of event somewhere along the line here, or the opening of the door to the next historical event as we move into this cycle. Oh, and yesterday I did a very interesting thing. I went to the farmer's market, as I always do on Saturdays, as I mentioned, and I went into the church that's right there, right at the farmer's market. There's a church. It's a church of the Archangel Michael here in Escazú. And I don't normally go into churches, but I knew that I was in this Saturn vibe, and I was feeling the Saturn energy at the end of the zodiac. And like I said, this is the Christian myth, right? So I go into the cathedral, or the church. It wasn't a big cathedral. And I'm hoping to light a candle. But I could not find a candle. I could not find a candle. There were no candles. And now they have those electronic candles that you can put the change in and then light one of the, like press the button and light the candle. But this church did not have that. And I've tried to go into that church before, but there was always a mass going on. So I couldn't light a candle. Another time I couldn't even find out if there were candles, and now I know that there are no candles. But what I did find, I did give a donation in the box, in one of the donation boxes that they have in the aisles. But there were people gathered in the church, and it wasn't a mass. But I think this is a really good sign. There were christenings going on, and there were all these babies there being christened. And there was one little girl who looked a little older, like maybe she was almost a year or so, and she had this big floofy white dress on while she was being christened. And there were other babies. There were at least 4 other babies there being christened. And I thought, how about that? Here I am stepping into a Catholic church with Saturn at 29 Pisces, and the hope of tomorrow is right in front of me, with these children being christened and like starting their lives. They're babies. They're starting their life. So I thought this was really interesting that I stepped into this moment in the church. I could have stepped into a funeral. I've been around there when there were funerals, but there was no funeral. It was christening. So this is the promise of spring. This is the newness. So I took that as a really good sign, because usually I can't get into the church because of there's usually a crowd there because they often have a mass. But this was a really good sign that I went there at like 10 a.m. Saturday morning and could make a little donation and watch these children being christened into their new world, their new life. So this is the energy of the new. I was excited about that. And then I went off and bought my arugula. If you want to know where this is all happening for you, the energy of the new, then come and have a session with me. Just go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, click book online, and you can set up a session for astrology. And we can talk about your chart. And you can set up a session for Reiki, and we can do some really good cleansing of the past and opening the door to the future and getting messages from the divine. And you can also do expansion mentoring with me, where you would spend 3 months or 6 months or 12 months with me, and we go through this transition together, learning about how to move forward and clearing anything that could get in the way of like the new for you. And I'm on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer. I posted something yesterday, and probably I'll be posting a little more often this week as we move through these transitions. And so look forward to that. I hope to see you on the internet in these next days, and I will be on this podcast on Sunday the 15th. Thank you so much for listening. Gratitude to each and every one of you. Blessings to all, and have a beautiful week.